The unemployment crisis. You've heard it everywhere. Every shop you've seen the help wanted signs. Just last year, you thought to yourself no one could even find a job. Now, no companies can find employees. This is all part of the result of a perfect storm. During the COVID pandemic, President Trump and the legislative branch signed into multiple acts to help the American people. Whether or not it was enough is still up for debate, but these acts included a one-time stimulus check, a weekly increase in unemployment, and many other things that were included. This meant for anybody who lost their job, was unable to work or was afraid to work due to COVID, or was not getting enough hours would make some situations up to $900 a week. For reference, this would equal about $22.50 an hour working 40 hours a week. Not only this, but the people out of work began enjoying time they never had, money they'd never made before, hobbies they didn't have a chance to do, and time with their families. They looked back at the struggles of working most of these everyday jobs and wondered why go back to the stress. For the first time in many people's lives, they actually had the money to spend and time with their family, which they never got before. While the working class struggled during the pandemic, corporations raked in the cash. Some estimate the wealthiest made nearly $1 trillion during the pandemic, while laying off thousands of workers. Walt Disney was estimated to have laid off 32,000 workers. Most stores refused to pay their employees extra for putting themselves in danger. When states like California signed the Heroes Pay Act to increase essential workers' pay during COVID, many locations opted to just close their stores instead of paying their employees out of protest. On top of this, people wondered, why return to a job where I can barely pay my bills working overtime? The minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. While some states have a minimum wage law that's higher than the average, it's roughly $10 an hour across the United States. Someone working 40 hours a week would only make $1,600 a month before taxes at $10 an hour. For reference, the average US rent price is $1,200 a month. That would leave the average person only $400 a month to pay all their bills, car payments, insurance, and food, etc. for the rest of the month. This is the reason why most Gen Z can't move out on their own alone. It's the same reason why most millennials cannot or did not until their 20s or early 30s. It's impossible to live off of one income today in the United States, but it hasn't always been this way. Prior to 1970, it wasn't uncommon for one family member to be the sole income provider for the whole family, to provide a roof and food on the table for the spouse and children. In 1948, the minimum wage, adjusted for inflation, would only be $8.25 an hour today, which means that the minimum wage has actually decreased while the cost of living has passively increased for the last 70 years. But adjusting for inflation isn't the only factor either. Wages should be reflective of productivity. Prior to 1970, the wages closely correlated to the productivity due to Congress repeatedly raising minimum wage. But once they stopped, wages stagnated, but productivity rose. From 1948, the wages have increased 109% to today. However, productivity has increased 243% from 1948 to today. If the wages were adjusted for inflation and productivity, a minimum wage should be equivalent to about $20 an hour roughly. But with the cost of living having risen so much due to corporate exploitation, the minimum wage needs to be roughly $25 an hour. Financial advisors say that housing should be about 30% of your monthly budget, and at an average of $1,200 a month for rent or mortgage, that would mean that making $4,000 a month is what you would have to do to cover that financial advice. At working 40 hours a week, you would have to make $25 an hour to make $4,000 a month in order to be 30% of your budget on housing. You might say to yourself, but the increase of wages will increase the cost of living, but it's not always true. Corporations have made so much profit they don't need to raise prices. McDonald's employees in Denmark, due to unionization, makes $20 an hour, gets several weeks of paid time off. However, the price of a Big Mac in Denmark is $5.15, while compared to the United States of $4.80. That's a 35-cent increase for nearly a 2.5 or 3 times hourly pay. Corporations warn of price increases may be telling you the truth, but not the whole truth. A 35 cent is a price increase, that's true, but will it break your bank if you're making 3 times your money? They hope to scare you that in hopes that you will back down on the submission and not ask questions. People often put themselves in a lifetime of debt to get a college degree in hopes of a good paying job, but most of the jobs that you spend 5 or 6 digits of debt on for a degree don't even pay you the basic $25 an hour to live. The other day I was on Indeed and found jobs searching for candidates with a master's degree offering $15 an hour. A talking point of those against paying people a living wage, and commonly of the Republican Party, is why pay a McDonald's employee the same as somebody with a master's degree? And they have a point, but the question is, why are you paying somebody with a master's degree so little so that they have to deliver food on the side to live? The issue isn't the other little guy making as much as you with a degree, it's why aren't you getting paid more for what you're worth? This is pitting Americans against each other. Companies try and push employees not to discuss wages. Scare tactics of price raising all create ways for corporate America to ensure their employees are in poverty. 60% of all food stamp recipients also are working a job. That means their job is paying them so little, their employees are actually relying on food stamps to survive. So why is there an unemployment crisis right now, or a lack of employment crisis, so to say? Well, the situation's been a wake-up call for many Americans, and as the strike has continued, many jobs are desperately begging for help in raising wages. Some instances are showing McDonald's hiring at $18 an hour in some locations. Jobs who cannot pay their employee a living wage are running a failing business and have no right to exist in this country. Because of the situation we find ourselves in, the American people might finally have woken up and broke the cycle of exploitation we face. Every single job, no matter how big or small, 40 hours a week, should provide a roof over your head and food on your table. No excuses. A job that might be easy for you may be extremely difficult for another, and vice versa. We all have our struggles, and nobody should be denied being able to support themselves on a one full-time job. Only time will tell if we, the people, can win this war of attrition against greedy corporate America.